Welcome back to Think Design Work Smart. I'm Alex Bolboaca and I'm coming at you from the Mozaic Works studios, and what I have for you today is a commentary to a very interesting article from the New Stack about the top 5 AI engineering trends of 2023. This is basically not only what happened in 2023, but also about things that we might expect in the next year. So I found it really interesting, and so we'll comment it. Before we start, please know that we want to be in touch with our community. We are now around 615 people. So we appreciate if you leave us comments, if you share things, if you ask questions. That is really helpful. You can do that on past videos or on the posts that we do for the community, or just send us by email. You can find my email on the mosaicworks.com, or you can contact there through mosaicworks.com website. Let's go now into the topic of the day. So, top 5 AI engineering trends of 2023. And I found this really interesting because I think we're gonna see a lot of new things in the next year, and I have some ideas about what we might expect. But let's see what they are saying and what the author is saying. This is an article written by Richard McManus, published on December 8th, 2023, 6:10 a.m. First trend, emergence of the AI engineer. First and foremost, there's now a new role for developers to consider for their careers, AI engineer. AI engineer is the next step up from prompt engineer, according to his main proselytizer, Sean at SWYX Wang. Earlier this year, he created a nifty diagram showing where AI engineers fit into the wider AI and development ecosystems, and basically is placing them. So there's a line. On one hand, you have data research constraint, ML researcher, and research scientist. Then you would have they are dealing with training and evaluations. Second is ML engineer, data scientist, research engineering, dealing with inference and data. And then full stack engineer on the completely other side, product user constraint. And in the middle, he expects having AI engineers who deal with chains, agents, tooling, and infrastructure, and which call through APIs existing models. The role of AI engineer is still very new. As of the end of 2023, it means a developer who uses LLMs and associated tooling such as the LangChain framework and vector databases. In an interview with Sean Wang, he likened the AI engineering role to being a mobile specialist. So think of AI as a platform, like mobile engineering. You just specialize in mobile stack. I don't want to touch it because mobile is gnarly. You go to all the mobile conferences, you know all the mobile tech, and you know the debates. But when I need anything mobile done, I come to you and you know how to get it done. He added that all developers should at least familiarize themselves with what AI engineering is, just as they would have at least learned the scope of mobile engineering when then became popular 10 to 15 years ago. Honestly, I expect that this might happen, but I was also thinking about the use cases for AI in software development. And I think one use case is obvious. You are the user of an AI agent, and your prompt can be from the code that you're trying to write, or related to the design, or maybe you want to generate a REST API and you would chat in some way with an AI agent. But on the other hand, I think there's a case to be made for LLMs that you train on your existing code and you ask them questions about the existing code. And maybe you also ask them questions about how to refactor the code, about the dependencies, about things like that. And that would be a very interesting use case. But I think in order to do that, you'd have to actually do some training. So I see some benefits in having this AI engineering role that works on and trains on the existing code. But it doesn't quite fit in the diagram that they are showing here. I guess what they are saying is that you might have applications that have parts of functionality offered through LLMs, and for that type of functionality you would have APIs and an AI engineer who know how to call that APIs and do kind of build stuff on top of it. And that's interesting, but to me, that's not really the most interesting use case, and I will be really curious on how much people are actually willing to interact with LLMs. It's been quite a hype, and many people have enjoyed, chatting with ChatGPT or generating images and so on. But do you really want to talk to an LLM for everything, like for support for your mobile provider or your internet provider? I'm not so sure. So we'll see. I have my doubts there. But anyway, I think they are right in the sense that there will be new roles that come up due to AI and LLMs. But what I would expect is that it goes more like full stack. So more like we have some base models and then we can train on top of those other things using maybe specific tools. That's what's more interesting, I think. Second trend, the evolution of the LLM stack. An associated trend in AI engineering this year has been the emergence of a tech stack for this new role. There are varying opinions of what the stack includes, but I like the following diagram from VC firm Andreessen Horowitz. Now, the problem with diagrams from these kinds of companies is that they have their own interests, so they will try to kind of sell specific models. And it's quite a big diagram, honestly. There's a lot of things here. So I won't go a lot into these details, but it's basically you have validation, logging, LLM cache, APIs plugins, vector databases, data pipelines, embedding. This looks awfully complicated. I think we'll start with simpler things, honestly, because everybody is trying to wrap their heads around these technologies and how they can use them. And I don't see anybody jumping straight to this very complex model. I think we'll start with something simpler. The orchestration layer is perhaps the most important for AI engineers, as that is where their application will connect to LLMs. This is where prompt engineering comes in, which is basically a method of querying LLMs to get these systems to provide useful information for applications. Over 2023, tools like LangChain and LlamaIndex emerged to help developers with prompt engineering and other LLM integrations. I see they are featuring LangChain. Yeah. LangChain, the trendiest web framework of 2023, thanks to AI. This is another article. And LlamaIndex. Okay, we'll have to look into those separately. But honestly, there's also a lot of hype here. So I'm not 100% convinced that we'll get all these full stack of things that we are seeing there. I think for a while, there will be an explosion of tools, and we already see it. But only some of them will actually be useful. So we'll have to see. And I have my eyes on a few. But we'll discuss this in another video. Open source LLMs. Now, this is very interesting, and this is something that I started to experiment with, and I find it really very interesting. Arguably, the most impactful development this year in AI engineering was the rise of open source LLMs. Having alternative non-proprietary LLMs to choose from became particularly important after OpenAI nearly imploded in November due to an attempted boardroom coup. We didn't comment on that because it was everywhere, but in case you don't know, the board tried to fire the CEO in OpenAI, the company that is building ChatGPT, and there were a few very chaotic days, and it ended up with the CEO getting back and with the board being fired. It was kind of a weird situation, and there's also rumors that they were very afraid about the fact that they found artificial general intelligence, and they were afraid of exploiting it and of the risks. And honestly, again, I think it's a lot of hype. I wouldn't bet on this. It's useful to understand that the people working on AI are also very interested in AI, and they have their own worries and biases, right? But it's very easy to think that an artificial system is getting close to AGI. You can confuse them quite easily. So I'm not so sure that anything like that happened, but what we know happened is that OpenAI indeed nearly imploded. So it's really useful to know that you have these open source alternatives. Most AI engineers I've talked to say that OpenAI's LLMs are still superior to all the other LLMs. However, open source models are fast catching up. That's really good to know. I'd like to see more alternative model. Meta's Llama 2 announced in July currently tops Stanford's Helm Holistic Evaluation of Language Model Benchmarking Leaderboard. Cool. I have no idea what Stanford's Helm is. I assume it's it's a top. But I tried try Llama 2 with voice recognition, and it worked really well. But it also gave me a full new understanding of the resources needed to run these systems at scale. Yeah. So running this on my laptop, which has a pretty a powerful GPU, it still took a lot of time. So it was pretty interesting. I want to test it more and to experiment a bit more with these open source models and with a few tools. I think it's quite cool to do that. And normally I don't like to praise Facebook or Meta, as they are called now, but really good job with publishing Llama 2. That's a really good thing. When Meta first announced Llama back in February, it released the model weights to the research community under a non-commercial license. Other powerful LLMs such as GPT are typically only accessible through limited APIs. In other words, Llama is much more adaptable for developers. As we head into 2024, this is potentially very disruptive for the current leaders in LLMs like OpenAI and Google. Yeah. But it's a good thing, because one very big risk would have been for large companies to have full control over their AIs over their LLM systems and block everybody else from this. So it's really good that we have an open source model. It happens to come from Facebook. Now, why did they publish it? I have no idea. I imagine there's a power play kind of strategy to deal with the other organizations. But it's a good thing. So I'm looking forward to experiment more with Llama probably in the next year. Hopefully this year as well, but most likely next year. Vector databases. By far the biggest influence on the data side of LLM development this year has been the use of vector databases. Microsoft defines a vector database as a type of database that stores data as a high-dimensional vectors, which are mathematical representations of features or attributes. The data is stored as a vector via a technique called embedding. This is indeed much like the blockchain, well, much like the Bitcoin, actually. The big innovation was the blockchain. And the blockchain has its very good uses, irrespective of what you think about virtual currency or crypto coins. AI, LLMs have had a big influence on, and one of the biggest innovation has been the vector databases. And apparently, I haven't looked into those in detail, so I'm really curious to see what how they describe it. I imagine since they are vectors, they kind of store distance and direction. And I can kind of imagine how this works for language. And it's particularly since you want to pick the next most likely word or phrase or from the ones that you have available. So that's basically what an LLM does. So I can see how it would go into a vector database to do that. But I can't imagine right now what other features or what other things you could do with a vector database. So let's see. In a contributed post on the news stack earlier this year, Mark Hinkle used the analogy of the warehouse to explain the use case for vector databases. Imagine a vector database of the vast warehouse and the AI as the skilled warehouse manager. In this warehouse, every item or data is stored in a box, vector, organized neatly on shelves in a multidimensional space. The AI can then retrieve or compare items based on their similarities. According to Hinkle, a vector database is ideal for applications like recommendation systems, anomaly detection, and natural language processing. Newer database solutions like Pinecone or open source projects like Chroma have carved out a profitable niche in vector databases this year, but there are now many options for vector databases in the market, including from existing database companies that are bolting this functionality on. For example, Redis offers vector database functionality in its Redis Enterprise product. Oh, I didn't know that. So I think this is really cool, and I can't imagine right now, but I almost expect that we'll find alternative uses for vector databases. I think we might find other ways of using them. Can't imagine why, but I'm actually looking forward to trying this out. I've rarely seen innovation in software development over many years. And this is one of the innovative things that have come up in I'm almost more interested in vector databases than in the LLMs themselves. I'm really curious what they can do. All right, number 5, AI agents. Perhaps the most controversial trend in AI engineering has been AI agent software such as AutoGPT, which was released to the world at the end of March. Still looking forward to trying this out. AI agents are automated pieces of software that use LLMs for various tasks. At the AI Engineering Summit in October, I sensed overconfidence among some of the speakers about the abilities of these automated agents. Yeah. I'm not convinced that they are doing what people will expect. I mean, replacing a lot of things. Let's not forget that we still have the hallucination problems. So I'm skeptical. There's a lot of hype right now. A lot of hype is also created by the immense money that is poured into these systems. So of course they will keep on pushing them, but we really have to be aware that they have their own uses and their own limitations. And my expectation is that there's a lot of hype and the uses will be lower than what our expectations, or than the expectation that they are setting at these conferences. Maybe it was even hubris, because the general idea of agents seems to be to take humans out of the equation. Nah. But if you have ever dealt with automated chatbots for the likes of your bank or phone company, chances are you wish that a human was at the other end of the chat. Yeah. Yes. So this is why I think there will be, and I said this in a previous video, I believe there will be a pushback on AI agents at some point. I can almost expect EU to pass some legislation to limit the use of AI agents in support. We'll see. To protect consumers. It's less likely for this to happen in US because the rules there are different, but in EU, based on what I've seen, I wouldn't be that surprised. Jacob Marks, a machine learning engineer at Voxel 51 and one of the conference attendees, put it this way in a LinkedIn post. AI agents are far from reaching their full potential. In part, this is due to the difficulty in creating robust evaluations for said agents. AutoGPT is in major flux. Perhaps 2024 is when AutoGPT and other AI agent software will come into its own. But for now, as OpenAI co-founder Andrei Karpathy warned in April, the risk is that AI agents could go off the rails. And the article closes with saying that, look, there is Meta and Google, and this week Google released Gemini, which is their competition to ChatGPT. So it's gonna be, it's gonna be hectic. I expect a lot of things to happen in this area, but I also expect a lot of hype and maybe some apocalyptic predictions, which I honestly don't buy into. So in general, I'm relaxed, but I'm really interested in some of these technologies and some of the use cases. So one thing that I'd really love to see is if you have a legacy system, to be able to train agents on top of that system and then to get some recommendations for refactorings or things like that. That would be really cool. And I think it's possible up to a level with a human making the decision. In the end anyway. So, and then I'm looking forward to use probably some of these open source models for things like transcribing these videos into, and maybe translating into other languages. This is something that I would be looking forward. I'm also open to trying agents for kind of pair programming. with AI, although I'm not very sure. What I've seen until now in terms of code that was generated by ChatGPT did not impress me. It's not very good code, and it doesn't quite solve the problems, and it has mistakes from time to time. So I will still do what I usually do when I write code, and that is test drive my code. That's, I think, one of the best ways of doing that. But I am interested in trying out some agents. I've seen some reports of agents that help with TDD. That makes a lot of sense to me, because really what we do in TDD is follow a bunch of patterns. And I think part of it can be, if not automated, at least you can get, this would be an interesting next step. Or maybe you could try and tell such an agent, refactor this for me, or extract method, or give commands, and they would do it slightly better than the existing tools. So who knows? Maybe we'll see some improvements. But I'm really curious what will happen in large companies and how they will try to implement or to introduce these AI systems in their products. We'll see. I'm really curious, and it's an exciting time, because we are on the verge of seeing new technology and some advances, but I don't think it will be as revolutionary as they are claiming. And so the question for you is, what do you think? What are your experiences with LLM agents? What are your experiences with programming and these agents? What are your experiences with integrating agents in products? Have you used vector databases? Have you used the open source data models? Let us know in the comments. We love having these conversations, and they might prompt other videos, and who knows, maybe even invite some people who can answer more interesting questions coming from you. Well, this has been all for me this time. Thank you kindly for the view, and until next time, remember to think, design, and work smart.